Gordon Stewart. I'm the publisher of PhillipsTown.info. I'm very happy to be here today with Sandy Galef, the Assemblywoman who represents our 90th district, in which we are situated along with such places as Ossining, Peekskill, Kent, Putnam Valley. So important as we are to ourselves, we are one of many constituencies that the Assemblywoman has to represent. That said, the great legislator of our lifetime, Tip O'Neill, reminded us that in his view, all politics is local. I amend that a little bit, but almost all is. So let's start with something that's intensely local to us. There's a full example. We've been worried about Route 9 and Fishkill Road. Now here you have all these people to represent and all these other places. Do you know about the traffic light issue on Route 9 and Fishkill Road?
Absolutely. And how did I learn about it first? Maybe it was constituents contacting me because, you know, I live and travel on all the roads, but I'm not there every day. So sometimes I don't know the major safety problems that people are having because I'm not necessarily doing the shopping, going to the little mall. It's not quite a mall, but whatever. Trying to make those left-hand turns on a day-to-day basis. So I'm sure that, you know, I learned about it from constituents calling me and telling me it's a problem. And what I do then is I go to the community and the community leaders and say, all right, I've gotten this call, you know, what is the issue? What have you been doing with the Department of Transportation of the state, because it's a state road? You know, what kind of responses have you gotten from them? And then I will say to them, you know, do you want me to be involved in this issue? Because I tend, you know, I don't like to tread over people if they feel that they're on a good course and that my involvement would make things maybe worse instead of better. But usually, you know, we work something out, and often that didn't happen in this case, but often I will have a meeting with the Department of Transportation. I will go up to Albany and bring the elected officials up and sit down with them and say, look, this is the problem. How are we going to be able to resolve this? Sometimes you don't have to have that specific meeting so that you go forward. One of the problems always with the Department of Transportation is they never want to tell you they have a problem, because once they say there's a problem, then if there's an accident, then there's liability. I learned that very early on. So they're always kind of quiet and secretive about what they're going to do.
Because if they publicly acknowledge there's
right,
a problem,
if they publicly
then this will
acknowledge,
be part of the litigation.
Right, it's just like a local community. If there's if somebody, you know, says, all right, there is a sidewalk problem, there holds this liability, and unless they get out there right away, you know, they have responsibility for having repaired that.
So you have to persuade them to try to fix something that they do not want to acknowledge as a problem to begin with.
Right.
So how do you do that?
And then sometimes it is a question of money. And I have to tell you right now, a lot of things that are going on because the Department of Transportation has been cut back significantly, and the money is available for any kind of capital projects, whether it's a signal or whether it's redesigning the road. They are looking at all of their communities in their region and trying to prioritize the one that is the most complicated, the most important, the one that has more safety issues than another one. And even though sometimes we feel that this is the worst problem in the world, there are others that come along. Or it may be that a bridge collapses and then everything goes out the window. The Department of Transportation puts aside everything and then has to deal with the bridge that's fallen.
Which matters completely and centrally to those of us who make this turn.
Right.
On the other hand, how many traffic lights would you think there are in your district alone? Probably 3,000 or 4,000. And the state of New York, possibly 100,000 traffic lights, and we have a state that's in danger of losing its credit rating.
So it's complicated.
It becomes a complicated business. But this is what I hope a lot of the people who watch this will get a great understanding of. Is how one does cause a local problem to be resolved is a more complicated business than just why can't someone knock some sense into these people. Let me move now. We tried to start with this little bird's eye close-up of one traffic light, but I'm sure you did not dedicate an entire career in local government in the hopes of being able to repair traffic lights. There are then somewhat broader issues. One of the ones that's affecting a number of of us here in Phillipstown is the thought about consolidation. Just as you have 6 towns to deal with, we, as you know, are proud of not just being in Phillipstown, but of individual units within Phillipstown, pre-revolutionary dating in some cases, and yet the idea that there may be something to be gained from overcoming some of these divisions seems to be gaining more and more purchase. You have a view on this topic.
I do.
You've done a lot of work on
Actually,
it, so I'd like to hear what it is.
I spent the last 2 years after my last election, I said, you know, what is going to be my big focus? And you know, we have to do everything. We have to do the local roads. We have to help people with their healthcare issues. We do a lot in my district office, and my staff is really, really helpful. And it is all local, as you were saying. But I decided, okay, what is the biggest problem we have? And the biggest problem is really taxes and high taxes. And that's what I hear about the most from people in my constituency, whether it's through emails. And even people in wealthier communities are now expressing their concern about high taxes. So if you look at all of it, and I lived in Virginia for a period of time. Actually, I was a teacher in the Albemarle School District around Charlottesville, Virginia. And I went to University of Virginia to get my master's at the same time. But they had a countywide school district. And so although I only lived there 3 years, I understand how it can work, and that it did work well, and it produced good students, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world. So I said to myself, okay, what is so different between our state and other states that people seem to be migrating to some of the southern states because they look at the taxes and they say, you know, I can have a nice life here and I don't have to spend so much money. And the biggest difference is the number of governments that we have. And we may be very proud of everything, but are we so proud that we want to keep spending our tax dollars on extra governments and extra school districts, or maybe extra administrators? And I think the answer is probably yes and no, depending on who you speak to. And making these changes, I found, is very, very difficult. I've been trying to provide town meetings within my community to both educate the people that I represent, but also to help our local officials gather ideas, find experts in the field that they too can speak with about how to get things done. And if you looked at Phillipstown, and I actually did like a poll in my newsletter one time, and what I found was most people were less concerned about combining courts. That seemed to be the one that they were more comfortable with. I actually think 80 to 90% said we can combine courts. It's because most people aren't in the court, probably, so as opposed to having kids in schools.
Right. Or there's a uniformity through the justice system anyway. They're enforcing the same laws.
Right.
And they're not supposed to enforce them according to local differences, and they're not supposed to say we have one law in Nelsonville, but so in Cold Spring we do it different. The statute is the statute, so there's a built-in uniformity.
Well, actually, when there was a report done by the New York State court system, there have been a couple of reports, and basically it says we need to combine to lower our costs for the courts, but also to provide more fairness and equity. And, you know, maybe it's because your local courts, maybe they know the families, whatever it is, maybe that's where equity isn't coming into place. Or in some courts, they have, you know, more capabilities with you know, keeping records, etc., than other places do. Actually, we have some courts in New York State that don't even have a lawyer as a judge.
Right. I mean, the New York Times has done pretty
mind-boggling to me.
Series on some of these things.
So if they have that problem, then we need more regional courts. And you know, in the courts here in Phillipstown, they're all on 301. Cold Spring, Nelsonville, and Phillipstown. Well, you know, all within basically walking distance of each other. So do you need to have that, or could you combine the court system? I think this is an opportunity, and in my community, I'm working to actually dissolve the village of Osney into the town of Osney and have the two courts combine it with Briarcliff, the court system.
What kind of approval are needed for court consolidation as opposed to school or political?
Well, you know, it depends how the court was established. What I have learned in the village of Osney, the court was established by state law. So we have to pass a state law to
Go
allow.
through the legislature for that.
Right, to allow. But in most cases, you might not have to. Now, in some
Nelsonville, Cold
cases,
Spring, you think that could be, for example, combined without?
nobody's asked me to really research that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as soon as I get like a sign that we want to
There's an
do
opening
this,
here. Yeah.
because I hate to tell you what to do, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. But as soon as I get that sign,
You're waiting for some will, and then you'll help find the way.
I will go out
Okay.
and find out. I was asked
Will of
by
the
the Village of
people.
Ossining to find out,
Okay.
and so we will definitely look into